All right, guys, today we're talking about solving quadratics by factoring and using the zero product property. So we've already done factoring quadratics, right? We did that in our last unit. So let's talk about how we can solve from those factors. And that's thanks to something called the zero product property. So what this says is if I were to have any two numbers, A and B, okay, and we multiplied them together, so A times B. And my answer was 0. Okay, so what's the only way I can multiply and get an answer of 0? Well, that's only possible if either A is 0 or B is 0. One of those numbers has to be 0. And using that fact is actually going to help us when we have two factors. When we've broken things into factors that are multiplied together, and their product is equal to 0, so we have to set this condition, then either factor has to equal 0. Either the first factor, A, is 0, or the second factor, B, is 0. Or you can apply that if there's more factors. You can extend this to having more than just two. But we need things being multiplied together and that product equaling 0. Okay, so here, there is our definition. For any numbers A and B, if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0. So let's figure out how we can use that to help us. And we're going to start by looking at some examples that are already factored. Okay, it says solve each equation by factoring and using the zero product property. Well, notice these are already factored out. I have two quantities or factors, right, 1, 2, that are being multiplied together, and they're set equal to 0. So using our zero product property, if we thought of this as being equal to A and this being equal to B, and they're being multiplied together and the answer is 0, then either A equals 0, which is n plus 8, or B equals 0, which is the 8n minus 7. So using our zero product property, we can say either n plus 8 equals 0, or the other factor, 8n minus 7, equals 0. But one of them has to equal 0. So if you imagine solving each of these cases, what value of n makes this factor 0? We can get that by getting n by itself, subtract 8 from both sides, and negative 8 is one of our solutions. If we add 7 over here, 8n equals 7. Divide both sides by 8 to get n by itself. And my other possible solution is 7/8. So our two possible solutions here is that n equals negative 8 and positive 7/8. Two solutions for our first answer. Okay, number 2. All right, number 2. We have x times x plus 8. Okay, in this case, again, I do have two factors. One of them is just x, but it's times the quantity x minus 8. So we're going to think of those as our values of A and B, and the product is set equal to 0, which is good. That's the condition we need for zero product property. So we know that either x equals 0, or, so that's the guy outside, or the quantity inside, x minus 8, that factor has to equal 0. Well, this first one, we don't need to do any math with. It's already solved for. 0 is a possibility. Over here, we would need to add 8 over, and we get x equals positive 8. So our two possible solutions here are x equals 0 or positive 8. So two possible solutions there. Okay, let's try some more examples. Okay, a few down below. Now, this one has 3 factors, and I said we can extend this to being 3 or more factors, right? So more than 2. So we can go straight to our zero product property, and that 2 on the outside. So we're saying either this equals 0, this equals 0, or this equals 0. So if I start, I said either 2 equals 0. Hopefully we'd go, well, it doesn't. 2 doesn't equal 0. Okay, so that means that we don't get any solutions from that term. There's no variable x there. So that 2 doesn't factor into our remaining 2 solutions. It does have some effect on the graph of this. It would make it twice as tall. But as far as the solutions, they would be the same. Okay, so or 5x plus 7, that's a 5, equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. So we've already eliminated that first case. Over here, I would need to subtract 7 and then divide by 5. So we're going to end up with negative 7/5. And for our second one, we just need to add 3 over to get x by itself here. So we get x equals 3. So our possible solutions, I'll have to write them down here this time, are x equals negative 7/5. And my 5s always keep curling on each other with this tablet here. Yeah, it just wants to do it. That's okay. Or positive 3. So there's our two solutions for this one. That 2 on the outside ended up not adding an extra solution for us. Now, if there was an x out there with the 2, then we would have had to have set, say, 2x equals 0 divided by 2, and 0 would have been a solution. Okay, we didn't have that case, but that's, just in case. We'll see something like that in a little bit. So try number 4. See if you can get the solutions from this. Pause the video now, and I will put my answers up when you're done. All right, check your solutions here. K should equal positive 1/5 and positive 2. And again, like in our previous example, number 3, that 8 on the outside can never equal 0. It does not have a variable with it. So we'd eliminate that immediately, and we end up getting 2 solutions, but only from our remaining 2 factors. Okay, let's try some more examples here. Same direction, solve each equation by factoring and using the zero product property. But this time they're not already factored for us, so we need to go back and remember how to do our x factors. So let's see, it's already set equal to 0, which is good. That's a condition I want. And I want my a squared to be positive, which it is. There's a positive 1 in front of it. So now we can go to set up our parentheses and go to our x factor. Okay, I need 2 numbers that multiply. Remember, they multiply to the last term. So they need to multiply to positive 16. And they need to add up to the middle term. So they're going to add up to positive 10. So we talked about that tells us some stuff here. This positive 16 tells me they have to be the same signs. A positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. Go ahead and set up my a's up in here. And when they are the same signs, this middle term kind of gives away what sign it will be. They're both going to be positive. So I need factors of 16 that add up to 10. And they're both positive, 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. And of course, the ones that are positive that add up to 10 are 2 and 8. So we made them all positive. If you wanted to give yourself that visual, we've already identified them here though, positive 2 and positive 8. So 2 and 8. And we have our correct factors. Now we're just taking a step further. Now that I have these factors that are being multiplied together, we can use the zero product property, which says either a plus 2 has to equal 0 or a plus 8 equals 0. I'm just not writing the word either this time. But we still set up our 2 cases. And here we'd need to subtract 2. And we get negative 2 as a solution. And we subtract 8, we're going to get negative 8 as our other solution. Okay, so our 2 solutions are that either a is equal to negative 2 or a equals negative 8. Okay, let's try number 6. This is kind of an odd case here. For number 6, remember when we're factoring, and I should have mentioned this in number 5 as well, we always want to look for a greatest common factor first. Okay, and now because we want to use zero product property, technically we want to make sure our equation's set equal to 0 and that my squared term is positive. It's on the side that makes it positive. So that's all set up. That's good. Now we're looking for the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor here is going to be n. They both have at least one n in common. And if I divide that out of each of them, we're left with n minus 3. And now we can use that zero product property. Either the factor on the outside here, n equals 0, or the factor inside here, n minus 3, has to equal 0. Well, this guy's pretty much already solved for, right? In fact, 0 will be one of my solutions. N's already by itself. So we get n equals 0, or n equals 3. Those are our two solutions for example 6. Okay, we've got two more to try out here. Try these out. See if you can come up with their solutions by factoring. Go ahead and pause the video. Try them out, and I'll put the solutions up in a second. All right, time to check your answers here. For number 7, you should have come up with x equals -1 or x equals -3. There's our two correct factors. For number 8, you should have come up with +5 and +8. I did my x factor and list down here for reference. If you did not get these, check the work. Pause the video now so you can view them and correct your mistakes. Okay, let's do a few more examples. These are going to be a little more complicated. And this time, the first thing they've thrown at me is my equation is not set equal to 0. Remember, to use that zero product property, it has to be equal to 0, so that's important. And to help me factor, I want to keep the squared term, which is to the left on number 9, positive. So that means we need to move this 5r and the 12 to the other side. So maybe I'll use a different color for 12. Subtract 12 over to the other side. And we're going to write it in that kind of descending by degree. So r squared goes first, then the -5r. These canceled, by the way. And then -12 equals 0. Now there's 0 on the right-hand side of my equation. There's nothing remaining. Okay, now they've also given me this problem. There are no greatest common factors, so that's unfortunate. And because of that 3, we're going to use our bottoms up method to factor this. So remember, that's where we hid our r over there by multiplying it over. And 3 times -12 makes -36. So we are kind of breaking math here. I want to remember to undo that once we factor. We're going to factor this thing for r. Okay, so doing my x factor for this, the two numbers that multiply to -36, which means they're opposite signs, that add up to -5, which means the bigger number is negative. So my factors of 36, 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. So I said they're opposite signs. The bigger number is negative. The smaller one is positive. And the ones that would give me -5 are right here. +4 and -9. So +4, -9. Don't forget, for the bottoms up, we have to come back and divide each of these by that value we multiplied over. So we need to divide each by 3. Okay, and we need to reduce our fractions if possible. And if they're already reduced and still have a bottom, this is where we bring them up in front of our variable. So I don't know where I got a 5 from. 3r plus 4, sorry. And over here, 9 divided by 3 is 3, so r minus 3. Okay, equals 0. This is the correct factorization, and now we can go back and set each equal to 0. So either 3r plus 4 equals 0, or r minus 3 equals 0. This first one, we're going to have 2 steps to finish solving for r. Subtract 4. So 3r equals -4, and divide away the 3. So r equals -4/3. Over here, a little bit easier. We just need to add 3 over, and we get r equals 3. So our two solutions are r equals -4/3 or r equals 3. Okay, try out number 10 right now. See if you can come up with the answer on your own. Pause the video, and when you unpause, the answer will be here. All right, here is our answer. Should have come up with -5/7 and +2. So this is what you should have got when you set it equal to 0. No greatest common factor, so multiply your 7 over. Do your x factor for this. You should come up with the factors of -14 and +5, dividing each by 7 and doing your bottoms up. These are the correct factors. And then setting each equal to 0 gives us those two solutions. Okay, we're going to try 2 more out. 1 for me, 1 for you. We'll see how we do. Okay, so let's try this one out. We've got same directions. I know I didn't copy the directions over, but same thing. We've got, for this first one, 4x squared equals 22x minus 10. So I need to set it equal to 0, so I can use 0 product property. And again, I want the x squared term positive. So let's move everything to the left. Subtract the 22x over and add the 10 over. I don't like terms to line up with either of those, but let's move them over. 4x squared minus 22x plus 10 equals 0. Okay, next, normally when we factor, remember, look for greatest common factors, and thank goodness there is one this time. They're all even numbers, so we can factor out a 2 first. So doing that will give me a smaller, easier quadratic remaining inside. So dividing all of these terms by 2, we get 2x squared minus 11x plus 5. Now we still want to try to factor the quadratic inside of there. And because of this 2, we are still going to do a bottoms up for this quadratic. So doing bottoms up in there, we're going to get x squared minus 11x plus 10. Remember, we multiply our 2 over. Factoring this, don't forget we're cheating math here, so we're going to have to undo that. Whoops, wrong color. Undo that at some point. All right, so this is going to be x and x. The positive 10, and the colors aren't changing. The positive 10 tells me they are the same signs, and this tells me they're both going to be negative. So I can do my x factor. They need to multiply to positive 10. They need to add up to negative 11. And I know they're both negative. So the factors of 10 is a pretty short list. There's 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and that's it. And if both of them are negative, the ones that add up to negative 11 are negative 1 and negative 10. Don't forget to come back and divide each of these by the 2 we multiplied over. Okay, and our first one does not reduce, and it still has a bottom, so we bring that up in front of x. But my second one, negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Now, I don't want to forget about this 2 we factored out earlier, so I'm just going to drop that guy down. And now we have all the correct factors set equal to 0. So either 2 equals 0, which it doesn't and never will, or 2x minus 1 equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. So here, if we add 1 over and divide by 2, we get positive 1/2. And over here, if we add 5 over, we get x equals 5. So our 2 solutions are positive 1/2 or positive 5. Okay, I'm going to have you try out this last one. Make sure once you set it equal to 0, you have v squared positive, that you're looking for greatest common factors. Okay, try that out, and when you unpause, I'll have the answer up. All right, here is our answer. How'd you do? If you got negative 1 and positive 1/5, you did great. So once we put everything on the same side, I just added 16v over here. There was a greatest common factor of 4 that you need to divide out of all terms. So once we've done that, then we still needed to do bottoms up. So we multiply our 5 over. That tells us we have opposite signs. The bigger number's positive. There's only one case really there, positive 5 and negative 1. Divide each by this 5 we multiplied over. So we divide each by 5. This reduces to 1. Here we bring the bottom up. And setting all 3 factors, don't forget about your 4. That is a factor. Even though it doesn't give us an extra solution, it should still be in your factors. We get positive 1 and positive 1/5.